Hey everybody, welcome to one of the first lessons in the Extraordinary Courage Tribe on flow. A couple of things about this is we're going to go over the 4 steps to flow again and again and again and again. I'm always amazed at how often people can hear the information and you ask them, okay, what are the 4 steps to flow? And they're like, I forget. So, one of the reasons I think this is because the 4 steps, you may need to rename them in a way that makes sense to you, okay? For me, when I heard the 4 steps, I was like, oh, it clicked with me. I got it, okay? Um, Different languaging may actually be very helpful for you in this, so please keep that in mind. So a little bit about how this came about. So years ago, I read a book. Actually, I mostly listened to it on Audible. It was called Stealing Fire, and it was a book. One of the authors is a guy named Steven Kotler. And in the book, they talked about flow state, and they talked about the 4 different steps to flow, right? And so Steven Kotler, some of his background was he was a journalist for like ESPN or something, and he got assigned to the X Games, and he was a bit of an athlete himself, and so he got assigned to following all these athletes doing this extreme, crazy stuff, like for example, one year the whole group, might be a consensus: don't do that move, you'll die. But next year, all the 12-year-olds are doing it. It's like, how can you have such radical improvements to what looked like it was impossible? Okay. And so he really started studying this. And when we talk about flow, what we're talking about is an ecstatic state, or, one of the ways it describes it is flow is when things look easy, but what's being done is amazingly difficult. Right now, as I'm recording this, the Olympics are going on, and man, talk about flow states. Like Simone Biles, you see her perform gymnastics, and it's like stunning. Like, how could any person actually do that? And yet she makes it look easy. So I think people in general have an affinity for flow states. It's why we like right now, I'm flying to Phoenix, Arizona to pick up my parents to take them to Salt Lake, to take them to a classical music concert, okay? And my parents are 90, 91, and my father loves classical music. It's just kind of my sister decided she wants to pay for it, so we're doing it, right? But why do people love this type of concert? Because the actual piece is stunningly complex, and yet the person performing it makes it look easy, right? So when we tap into flow, it allows us to do anything much more effectively. For example, in business, according to some research, executives who are in flow are 400 to 500% more effective than people who aren't, right? So flow is something you can connect to in any area of your life. I've definitely used this in business, helping people develop beautiful businesses, helping people with relationships, or health. It's a big one too. Okay, so let's now talk a bit about the 4 steps to flow. Okay, and again, take how I describe them, and if the name doesn't click with you or the description doesn't click with you, figure out your own word. Okay, super important. So the 4 steps are selflessness, timelessness, effortlessness, and richness. Selflessness, timelessness, effortlessness, and richness. So the 4 sequential steps to tap into any ecstatic state. And by the way, I noticed that there's a lot of holistic health practitioners, and a lot of you may do muscle testing as practitioners. Guess what? You want to muscle test really, really well? These 4 steps are the key: selflessness, timelessness, effortlessness, and richness. If you're struggling to muscle test, you're disconnected from one of these steps. So I would love for you, as you watch this, to maybe give some of your own rules for attaining these values in the comments below. For example, first we'll start with selflessness. To get your ego out of the way. If you want to do a huge deep dive into the ego, David Hawkins' book, The I, E-Y-E of the I, letter I, the I of the I, is amazing, super like dense, like deep, 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 deep stuff. So selflessness is when all of what you're doing or not doing is not done to protect your ego. Okay. So keep in mind that there's 2 different ways you can get your value. Okay. You can get your value, your identity, from how well am I performing? How are people treating me? How are institutions honoring me? Right. And none of these is very secure, and so it leaves you very vulnerable, and it creates a lot of stress. And by the way, anything that can tell you what you're worth owns you. Or you can shift and you can allow unconditional love to define you. Okay. And when that happens, you're a free person. Okay. And we're going to dive into this a lot more. You may come up with a different definition on exactly how you get your value. Now, one of the fascinating things is this question is, where do you get your worth and how do you know what you're worth, is perhaps the most important question you can answer in your life. And shockingly, almost no one has a clear definition that is an empowering definition. Okay. So when you are able to be free and to know that you're divinely and unconditionally loved, I mean, that's my definition. And we'll go into this a bit more in great depth because this is really important. When I make my definition that, then life becomes a lot less stressful, right? It's like, I know what I'm worth. I know what I'm worth this morning. I know what I'll be worth tomorrow. Doesn't matter what happens today, right? One of the great benefits of selflessness, or to be connected to this divine unconditional love, is that it allows you to be wholehearted. And wholehearted is just like when you know what, when you can go for it in life. And you'll still fail, and failure still hurts. But when you can be wholehearted, you do that from being connected to unconditional love. And failure can't put shame on you anymore, right? And that's key. So, selflessness. The next one is timelessness. It's good to look for the type of language you use. I have to. I must. I should. Right? When outside things, circumstances, people, institutions can put pressure on you, they control what you're doing, not doing every day, then you step out of timelessness. Okay. Think about this. You know, my amazing granddaughter, She'll be 2 in September. Oh, it's just such a sweet girl. But she's teething a bit and she's having the rare meltdown. But you understand when a 2 or 3-year-old has a meltdown, everything is urgent. And they try to be a little bit of a terrorist. Now, all of you who are parents, imagine what your life would be like if you allowed the 2 and 3-year-olds in your life to dictate your schedule or your day. It would be shockingly bad, right? Now, it can be easier to do that, okay? Maybe as a parent, you observe another parent, maybe she's got a child that's having a temper tantrum, and you see this parent consistently giving in to the child, giving the child what it wants and or demands, because it's easier. But you know there's extreme consequences down the road to that, right? So timelessness means that you schedule in fun. Timelessness means that maybe you plan your day before it happens, okay? If you don't do that, you live a reactive life instead of a proactive life. In other words, you'll simply wake up every morning and simply wait for the first thing that demands your attention, okay? And you'll go from crisis to crisis to crisis to crisis, dealing with all urgent things which may not be important, and not dealing with and focusing on the things that may not be urgent but are vitally important. Here's a great example. One of my spiritual mentors says this. He goes, when I have a major crisis in my ministry, step number 1, go fishing. Like, what do you mean, go fishing? He goes, when I go fishing, tranquility breeds creativity. I will come back from my fishing trip having received divine revelation of exactly how to fix it. Okay? So often when I have clients who are in crisis in some area of their life, I ask them, oh, so what do you do for fun? And they'll be like, fun? Yeah, fun, right? And their inability to answer this tells me that they can't get into timelessness, right? So highly productive people, they prioritize having fun, right? One way to describe it is, do you have a hedonic calendar or hedonism? Or is like, do you put on the calendar enjoyment and fun, right? Years ago, I heard this guy on a podcast. He said, he goes, I coach high net worth families. And he goes, when I start working with a new family, one of the first things I ask them to do, I say, hey, I would like you to take a week's vacation every 6 weeks. Because typically people look at me like I'm an insane person. He goes, please, try it. He goes, invariably, they'll come back from their vacation and they'll be like, there I was walking on the beach, minding my own business, and all of a sudden, ping, I got an amazing idea, right? So when we step out of timelessness, we become very focused on the problem, and this tunnel vision looks and feels like it is something that is responsible. Well, I'm being responsible by stressing and worrying and not doing anything fun. It's like, no, you're not. You're being irresponsible because you're unable to be as effective as you really could be, right? So, selflessness, timelessness. The next one, effortlessness. And effortlessness has a lot to do with your relationship with frustration. Okay. I'm so frustrated. Well, if you assume that life is hard, then you're like, well, I'm so frustrated. I'm just not sure if I can do this. I'm not sure if this is going to work out. But I can't quit, so I'm going to move forward with the same mindset and same approach. Okay. To step into effortlessness, one thing you can do is treat the emotion of frustration as a beautiful, very helpful feedback, right? If you're using a GPS to go somewhere in your car And all of a sudden the voice prompt starts saying, hey, make a legal U-turn. Make a legal U-turn. Why is it saying that? It's because you got off route. And now you're on the four-wheel drive dirt road instead of the freeway. You should turn around and go back and allow it to be easy again, right? One of the things I train my coaching clients and my business partners on is this, to ask a simple question over and over, because the questions you ask are where your brain points. How about this question? How come it was so easy to do this? Or how could we make it easier? Or where is the easy way to do it, right? And you'll find now your brain is looking for those answers instead of, why are they doing this to me? How come it's so hard? It's like, your brain will give you answers, but none of them will be helpful. So selflessness, timelessness, effortlessness, and richness. And the last one is, can you connect to mercy and grace? Like just to receiving, right? Or is your beautiful future exclusively limited to your ability to perform, to do the right thing, and to do it well enough for long enough, right? You know, mercy and grace is definitely something that's talked about in the Bible a lot, but very few people really explore that much. Like, what are we really talking about here? So I want to give you a bit of an example. Imagine that you're driving somewhere and you're in a big hurry, and all of a sudden you're getting pulled over, and when you see those lights behind you, you realize, I think I was doing like 30 miles an hour over the speed limit in this school zone while my phone is stuck to my face. You're like, oh, man, you're like, your heart sinks, you're stressed. Why? Because you have performed poorly and there's consequences coming. So the police officer walks up to your car, and right off the bat he goes, hey, you know what, by the way, I just want to let you know, just giving you warning today. How do you feel? Like your emotions are like, ah, thank goodness. It's mercy. Is there divine mercy available, right? Expect it, look for it, receive it. Then the police officer says this, he goes, by the way, we have a very interesting community outreach program going on right now. Here's a $100 Starbucks gift card. Coffee's on this month. Have a great day. And you're like, you're so confused. Why? Because you don't understand what you did to earn that. And that's grace. So I believe a key part of flow is to get better at walking and receiving mercy and grace. Maybe you don't do the first 3 steps of flow very well, not perfectly, consistently all the time. Could things still turn out for you? They could, if you're open to it. Anyways, hope that's helpful today. Please comment below on some of your personal insights on this. Would love to know, hey, where do you get your value? And how do you know it, right? Anyways, we will talk about this much more again and again. If you've watched this and you've come up with different descriptions of these 4 steps, we'd love for you to share that below as well.